in the US, I don't know about Canada, you're supposed to get your rabies every 3 years. But I see so many people that are putting their animals in these dog care centers and they're making them do everything every year, which isn't, something you have to do legally. And people just do it. And, even like the oral flea meds, it's a huge problem. These little dogs were on that every month for their whole lives. I mean, he's only 2, but the other one's 12, 13. And it's a lot of poisons with everything else bombarding in their systems.
And rabies, if you didn't know, was never a real problem. Whether you're on terrain theory or not, it really doesn't matter.
Right.
Whether you believe in
Right.
virus transmission or not, rabies was never an actual problem. The so-called cases of rabies were so rare, so far and few between, that the average dog has literally a 0% chance
Yeah.
of, quote, contracting
Yeah.
rabies. And it's debatable whether rabies actually exists as a thing, but
Right.
even if it did, almost no one has any risk of ever catching it.
Yeah. 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 What's it called? There was a dog that I was trying to rescue and I was trying to get it boarded somewhere. And I had called one of the VCAs and I was like, can I get this dog boarded? They're like, oh no. And they gave me a list of the vaccines that they wanted. My mouth was on the floor. I'm just like, do they do this all at once? I mean, it was insane. Can they add the influenza one to it? There's a couple new ones. I was just like, okay, no, thanks. I won't, you know, won't do that to this poor dog. So,
Unfortunately, veterinarians are paid under the same model as human doctors. So if there's no health problems with dogs, they have no job,
yeah,
whereas the farm town veterinarian would be paid to keep flocks healthy and they'd be paid on more or less of a salary basis in the past. And, they might just come by and check out the farm once every 6 months or once a year or something like that. You probably wouldn't need them. They're on standby. They're on call. Like Dr. Wallach, if there's
yep.
nitrates in the water or something, they might come in and investigate. But they're able to keep their job without having to deal with sick animals.
They
So
definitely use come in and get your new vaccine or your health check to, keep the money coming.
it keeps
And
them relevant.
right. And it definitely, I mean, just from like 20 years ago when I started with a nonprofit and I was, rescuing all the animals, like, I'd been to all the vets in LA. I knew which ones to go for what. And it's gotten crazy. I mean, it's out of control now. What they're charging, what they're doing, over testing, so many things unnecessary. I know there's a lot of well-meaning vets out there, but it's just gotten really bad, in my opinion.
And that phrase that Dr. Wallach used, treat them like dogs and they get better. He's talking about his human patients.
Yeah.
Well, Wallach came up in the 40s and 50s and 60s, and things have changed. Doctors or veterinarians at one point were taught how to prevent diseases with nutrition, how to treat them with nutrition if there was a problem. But in general, they wouldn't be needed that much because the nutritional foundation was just there from the beginning. Educate the farmers on what to do. Even the American government stepped in and did this. And selenium's one example. We were just talking about selenite. The American government came in at one point, I think it was in the 60s. I might have to correct myself on the screen here or in editing. They told farmers to put selenium into their soils, especially up in the Northwest, especially when they started using sulfur-based certain fertilizers, certain pesticides that had sulfur in them, which competes for selenium. And there's already major swaths of America and other countries like New Zealand that are very, very, very depleted in selenium. Talking about the Great Lakes region and the entire East Coast, especially for America.
Wow.
Very, very devoid in selenium. But then they brought in some of these sulfur chemicals for farming, and it actually inhibited the absorption of the selenium into plants. And so we had huge problems. This is economic problems here. Whole flocks were not doing very well. And so the government had to come in and tell farmers to add selenium to their feeds. And this is the same basic reason they added iodine into human foods in the 1920s, because we realized this was a society-wide problem. And these same problems tend to affect our animals as well. So I'm just saying that it was all about prevention before in the veterinarian industry. And now vets are being taught basically the same as human doctors. They will use absolutely the same drugs for arthritis and diabetes and cancer that they would use for a human. and they have absolutely no idea how to prevent or reverse it, and they do not understand the problems with dog foods and cat foods. Some of them kind of do, but it's a lot of weird ideas that they have. Like you mentioned, you go to your vet, you say, hey, I'm feeding my dog Old Roy. They say, okay, put him on the science diet. And they think that that's the solution. Whereas, I was looking at the label of the science diet earlier and I'm like, this is not very good. They got barley, wheat.
Mm-hmm.
What is this? Iodized salts. Like these are some
It's
cheap
bad.
ingredients.
The ones at the market are even worse. The ones that they just sell at a regular market. Woo. And they make them look all delightful with their, marketing,
A happy dog on the cover.
right? Yeah. Happy, healthy pets. And they show all these pictures of all these whole foods. And then you look and you're like, what? So, you know, yeah, everyone go look at your dog food. See if it's oils, there's gluten, wheat, sodium selenite. Those are things you don't want.
So I hate to make it confusing for people, and I didn't even give my answer yet of what I would do if I had a dog or a cat for that matter.
Yeah.
First of all, I won't get one of these pets unless, okay, a dog. I wouldn't get a dog unless it's allowed to live outside. That's just my personal preference. We live in the deep country. I spend half my time in two places, but up north in Canada, where we live, there's a lot of outdoor dogs out there. They're usually big mountain dogs and stuff like that. They can live outside year round. They love it. They
Yeah.
go and they eat whatever squirrels and mice, and I mean you give them dog food too. But they can drink from the stream, from the well, and they just have a good life outside. I don't want
Yeah.
to walk a dog, especially up there in Canada. It gets extremely cold. Tamra, you've probably never felt that type of cold. It's
I can't go under 17 degrees. That's the coldest I've ever been. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, no, we're talking minus 30, minus
Oh
40,
no.
Fahrenheit or Celsius, whatever
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you spit in the air and it freezes in the air, I don't want to walk the dog in that. So unless it can live outside totally,